Hey everybody, just a little message that I tacked on to the beginning of this. I know it's been a long time since I've uploaded. I'm slowly starting to get things back on track. I know this review is super late, but please enjoy. And without further ado, on to the review. Hey everybody, welcome back to another total random review for Star Trek Discovery, Episode 9, Into the Forest I Go. Before we get started, let's just remember that there are spoilers coming. So if you don't want the episode spoiled for you, then don't watch this video. And if you don't care or have already seen it, then please enjoy. So let's start off with my initial thoughts for this episode. Overall, this was a very good episode. Like, seriously good. Action-packed, filled with technobabble, and lots of fun. It advances the story and the characters in a very good way. And like so very few episodes before, it was actually a very good Trek episode. So I was thoroughly pleased with what we got. But let's move on to the synopsis. What happened in this episode? Oh boy. So the episode starts off with the Vulcan Admiral ordering Lorca to fall back behind Federation lines. Lorca obviously does not like that at all. He points out that the Klingons will destroy Pavos and the Pavans if they do nothing. The Admiral points out that the mission to help Starfleet get the upper hand failed, and that the only course of action is to have all ships fall back and work together to crack the secret behind the Klingons' cloaking technology. The Admiral ends the conversation by ordering Discovery back to Starbase 46. This entire exchange takes place on the bridge in front of everyone, so everybody heard everything. Captain Lorca orders them to head back to Starbase at Warp 5. Saru interrupts and tries to convince the captain to allow himself to speak to the Admiral in an attempt to convince him that the Pavans need protecting. Lorca cuts him off and explains that at Warp 5, Starbase 46 would be expecting them to arrive in 3 hours. He explains to the crew that he has no intention on arriving at the starbase. He adds that if you're going to disobey a direct order, it's best not to advertise it. With that being said, he points out that they have 3 hours to figure out a way of getting through the Klingons' cloak. If they succeed, they will jump back to Pavos and save the planet and its people. Well, its kind of people. The crew acknowledges the captain's order and gets to work. Lorca approaches Stamets, who is on the bridge, and asks him for a good reason to give to Starfleet as to why they are traveling at warp and not using the spore drive. The captain goes on to explain that he has heard that Stamets may have been having some issues with his interface. Stamets plays along and confirms that it has been a little itchy. Lorca takes that info, orders him to sickbay for a full medical examination, and walks off. Stamets quickly panics since he knows that he has been having some serious issues with it than he has let on. Lorca explains that he needs the data trail and orders him again to get to the examination. An hour later, Lorca enters the bridge and points out that they have 2 hours left and that the Klingons will arrive at Pavos sooner than that. He asks if they have made any progress. Burnham pipes in and states that they currently suspect that the cloak creates a massive gravitational field, one that bends light and other electromagnetic waves around the ship, essentially making the ship invisible to sensors. She goes on to point out that the cloak has small imperfections, that what appears as background EM radiation actually contains near imperceptible shifts that correlate to the cloak's gravitational field. Saru adds that if they can determine the exact relationship between the two, they could develop an algorithm to expose any invisible ship's position. Lorca points out that the imperfections are infinitesimal, and asks how they were going to detect them. Saru answers that by placing sensors on board the Klingon ship, they could relay data back to Discovery. Tyler suggests that they use Discovery as bait to draw the Ship of the Dead in so that they'd have to drop the cloak to engage them in battle. Burnham adds that shields and weapons are offline when cloaked. This gives them a small window to beam over after the cloak is down, but before the shields go back up. Burnham adds that there is a problem with the plan. In order to get the data they need to make this work, it would take days. Lorca responds and points out that they don't have days, but they do have a spore drive. Later in sickbay, Lorca asks Culber for an update on Lieutenant Stamets. The doctor, in a harsh tone, explains that he actually did find a serious issue with Stamets due to the spore drive jumps. He explains that Lieutenant Stamets' scans show a restructuring of the tracks within the white matter of his medial temporal lobe. Whatever that means. The captain asks if he has experienced any side effects as a result of this, which Stamets lies and says no. Lorca orders the doctor to send the report over to him, and that he will look over it. Lorca orders Stamets to follow him. In Lorca's ready room, the captain explains to Stamets that he wants him to perform 133 microjumps in rapid succession to help create a three-dimensional snapshot of the cloaked ship's position. Stamets agrees that it would get them the info they need for the algorithm, but that to compute something that complex would take time. Lorca goes on to explain that this is the only way that they are going to make this work, that he wishes he did not have to ask Stamets to make this kind of a sacrifice, but it is the only way. Stamets, still not convinced that this was the only way, goes on to explain that the spore drive was not built for this. Lorca asks him if that was really going to stop him. He points out that he knows the kind of man Stamets is. That he's not just a scientist, but an explorer. He could have taken a post on Earth, but chose to go into space. Lorca brings up a star map to show Stamets. Lorca has been accumulating data on all of Stamets' spore jumps. Stamets looks it over and points out that the scattered pockets of negative mass could indicate a number of alternative parallel universes connected to the mycelial network, and that with more jumps, they could find a pattern, perhaps even coordinates, to reach them. This seals the deal for Stamets, and he agrees to do the jumps. On the bridge, Lorca orders Tyler to put together an away team. He asks for Burnham. Lorca was against this, but was eventually convinced. In the spore drive room, Stamets is getting ready to hook himself up to the drive. Tilly accidentally lets slip that Stamets was having side effects to Culber. Culber, angry at Stamets, finishes hooking him up, and Stamets enters the chamber as Captain Lorca starts to give the entire ship an inspirational speech, explaining to all of them that they are the only ship and crew in the fleet that can do this, that they were all polite scientists when he took command of the Discovery, and that they are all now fierce warriors, and that they will all look back proudly and tell the world that they were there on the day that the USS Discovery saved Pavos and ended the Klingon War. The captain's speech ended just in time to be informed that they were detecting the Klingon ship of the dead approaching Pavos. The captain orders a black alert, and they jump back. On the Klingon ship, Cole is seen with Captain Georgiou's badge in his palm. He is informed by one of his men that the Discovery just appeared in orbit of the planet and that their weapons are armed. Cole calls them fools, says that they will storm her decks, execute their crew, and take their storied weapon for themselves. He proclaims that the war will be theirs, and orders to drop the cloak. As this is happening, Tyler and Burnham beam over to the Klingon ship. With that, the captain orders the crew to engage in maneuvers with the Klingon ship to buy the away team some time. On the Klingon ship, Burnham confirms that their life pattern simulators are online and that their life signs are now masked as Klingon. They make their way to the first sensor location and plant it. They make their way to the second and final location, which is on the bridge. However, along the way, Burnham is detecting a human life sign on board. Tyler says they need to continue with their mission, but Burnham points out that the life sign is on the way to the bridge and convinces Tyler to go through with it. They arrive and break through the door that was keeping them from the human life sign. They walk into the Klingon burial chamber and see Admiral Cornwell laying on the ground. Tyler also sees the female Klingon that held him captive for months and pulls his phaser out and points it at her. Tyler is hit with a wave of horrible memories where he was brutally tortured and handled by this very Klingon, L'Rell. L'Rell approaches Tyler and Burnham sees it and stuns L'Rell. As L'Rell falls to the ground, so does Tyler, who is now having a severe panic attack. Burnham picks him up and carries him over to the Admiral. The Admiral asks if Tyler is injured, and Burnham explains that Tyler is a survivor of Klingon torture. The Admiral orders Burnham to explain her mission. She does so. The Admiral explains that she has treated people with severe PTSD before, and that Lieutenant Tyler is in shock, and that he was not going to be of any help to her anytime soon. Burnham explains that she needs to continue to the bridge, and she arms the Admiral with a phaser, and continues with her mission. The battle continues between Discovery and the sarcophagus ship as we see Burnham arrive on the bridge and set up the last sensor. Discovery gets the signal and commences the jumps. Here we see an impressive display of the Discovery jumping from one point to another, surrounding the Klingon ship as they also continue to attack the ship of the dead. Back on the Klingon ship, Burnham activates her universal translator to hear what is going on the bridge. With the revelation of what Starfleet's secret weapon is, Cole orders his men to cloak the ship. With that, Discovery starts to receive telemetry from the sensors. So far, everything's going according to plan. They continue with their jumps and start collecting the data they need. At this point, they still have 96 jumps left. The Doctor, understandably, is very concerned at the revelation. The Doctor requests and then demands that they stop, but the Captain gives the order to continue. Stamets is not faring well. Back in the burial chamber, Admiral Cornwell is trying to calm Tyler. On the bridge, they are detecting signs of sabotage near the burial chamber. Cole suspects L'Rell. He orders his men to investigate. Cole gives the order to warp out of the system and explains that this display from Starfleet is part of a ruse, and that he does not intend to let himself be fooled. This will, of course, ruin Discovery's plan if they engage warp, so Burnham, overhearing all this, makes her presence known and starts to open fire on the Klingons in an attempt to buy Discovery more time. She uses the universal translator to communicate with Cole and requests an audience. She spots Georgiou's badge, and he starts to pick his teeth with it in an attempt to anger her. She attacks his honor by pointing out that there is no honor in taking a ship that does not belong to them, referring to Cole taking the ship of the dead from Vok. She also points out that she knows all of this because she was there on the day that T'Kuvma died, because she was the one who killed him. Back in the burial chamber, Tyler is slowly getting his wits back as Cornwell continues to counsel him as the Klingons Cole sent are banging on the door. They get through and Cornwell starts using her phaser. The Admiral pleads with Tyler to snap out of it and that Burnham was in danger and needs help. This triggers his memories of Burnham, which shakes him out of it, and he leaps into action, taking out the Klingons. Back on the Klingon bridge, the realization that Burnham was the slayer T'Kuvma leads Cole to realize that the badge he holds belonged to her former captain. Burnham expresses her regret that her actions on that day led to their peoples being at war. Cole thanks her for it because his rise to power would not have been possible otherwise. He orders to lock her up, and she interrupts him, demanding that he show the same honor that T'Kuvma showed Georgiou by defeating her in honorable combat. Cole laughs, attaches Georgiou's badge to his chest, and accepts the challenge, and tosses a blade at Burnham. Cole picks up another blade, and they begin to have an epic heated fight. Burnham gets the wind knocked out of her for a bit, but continues with her attacks. Back on Discovery, they finished performing the final jump. Saru explains that the algorithm will need about 5 minutes to process the info. Lorca decides to stand their ground and explains that they're not leaving without Tyler or Burnham. Back on the Klingon ship, the fight between Cole and Burnham continues. She gets cut on her arm and knocked to the ground, and she manages to shove her blade into Cole's calf. On Discovery, Saru informs the captain that they now have the cloak frequency and is transferring it over to the transporter room to beam back Tyler and Burnham. Tyler informs Discovery that Burnham is on the bridge and that he has another beside himself to beam back. They start to transport him, and as he starts to disappear, L'Rell jumps him and gets caught in the transporter beam as well. Back on the bridge, the fight continues. However, Burnham gets the comm message to prepare for a beam out. She gets Cole in a hold, takes back JoJo's badge, jumps off the ledge, and beams out in mid-drop, leaving Cole yelling in anger. Back on Discovery, Saru informs the captain that the away team has returned, along with Admiral Cornwell and a Klingon. Captain Lorca acknowledges the info and orders to load all available torpedoes and targets the Klingons. The captain walks up to the view screen while medicating his eyes so that he can witness the destruction of the Klingon vessel. Discovery opens fire, pummeling the Skarath's ship and destroying with all hands aboard. Later we see Admiral Vulcan speaking to Lorca over comms, and he explains that Admiral Cornwell's emergency medical shuttle has safely arrived to the starbase. Lorca explains that the algorithm is being sent to Starfleet and should be done in about 11 hours. The Admiral, in a very Vulcan way, commends Lorca on his unorthodox method of succeeding at his mission. He orders them to get to safety and head back to Starbase 46 ASAP. He also states that Lorca's achievements have not gone unnoticed and that upon arrival, Starfleet would like to award him with the Legion of Honor. They end the conversation there, but Lorca is left with an odd, almost concerned look on his face. Later we see Burnham visit Tyler at his quarters to check on him and see how he is doing. She also questions him about L'Rell. He explains that she is the reason why he had nightmares ever since he escaped with Lorca. She was also the reason why he was still alive. He did what he could to survive. L'Rell took a liking to him, and so he survived. Even encouraged L'Rell's behavior so that he would not end up dead like the others. They share an embrace, and they kiss. Stamets in the shuttle bay is taking a long look at Pavos. Lorca approaches him from behind and says that Starfleet wanted to give him a medal for leading the mission and saving Pavos. Unless this was done off-screen, Lorca lies to Stamets and says that he told them to give the medal to Stamets. Stamets explains that that was not necessary. Lorca explains that he was the one who did the jumps, and they could not have done this without him. Lorca goes on to explain that more Klingons are on the way as a result, and that Starfleet has ordered them back to Starbase 46. Stamets asks if they need to jump back. Lorca explains that they can warp back, especially after all that Stamets has just gone through. Stamets explains that he will do the jump to get the crew to safety because the Klingons were coming. Lorca accepts and thanks Stamets for volunteering. Lorca goes on to explain that thanks to him, they were going to win this war, and that after that, a whole new chapter in Discovery will begin for Discovery. Stamets interrupts and explains that this was his final jump, that he has seen the stars through a lens that no other person ever has, and that was enough. What he needs now is Starfleet's best doctors to find out what the hell is wrong with him and get him fixed up. Lorca seems to accept this, and they head back to make the final jump. Next we see Tyler having another nightmare, this time of him and L'Rell having some very heated sex. One of the many things Tyler had to do to survive. He wakes up in a cold sweat with Burnham sleeping right next to him, gets up and heads to the brig to confront L'Rell. Upon arrival, Tyler walks up and drops to his knees and asks her what she had done to him. She explains that he should not worry and that she will never let them hurt him. The alarms sound for a black alert. Tyler gets up to head to his station, and all L'Rell has to say at that point was, soon. And then Tyler leaves. In the spore drive room, Stamets and Culber share a very touching moment as he prepares to get ready for his final jump. On the bridge, we see Lorca manually enter in the spore jump coordinates and engages them, only something goes terribly wrong. Stamets screams out in pain. The chamber around him seems to be freezing. Cadet Tilly explains that the computer says it was an incomplete navigation sequence. The chamber opens up and Stamets falls out. His eyes go white. Stamets states that there are so many that he can see, infinite permutations. He does not seem to be aware of his surroundings. The episode ends on the bridge with Saru unable to determine where they are. The sensors are not functional and the ship is surrounded by debris. Well, that is the synopsis. That is how the season ended. Now, let's go over the things I noted. Let's start with some of the small stuff. Earlier in the episode, when Captain Lorca walks in to check up on Stamets and his medical examination, the doors open and you hear a TOS door sound. That's right, the doors open and it does the TOS door sound. You know, it's minor, but at this point I'll take anything. Very happy with that. That was really nice. Something else, life sign simulator. What the hell is this? They have a device that can mask their life signs as whatever they want them to be? Why has this technology never been used ever again? I mean, that would be very helpful when they're boarding Borg ships. So I'm very confused as to where this came from and why it doesn't exist in the future. Again, another minor thing, but this is kind of dumb, in my opinion. The Universal Translator saves the day. Honestly, this has been my most favorite episode involving the Klingons. And the main reason for that is a big portion of the Klingon scenes had a Universal Translator translating everything, so the Klingons were speaking English the whole time. Something that this show has been lacking dearly, because honestly, a lot of people have said it, and I agree. When you force these actors to constantly speak in Klingon in all their scenes, you're not letting the actor act properly. You can't get the emotions they're trying to convey. It's just much better if you let them speak English and let us assume that they're speaking Klingon to each other. So I thought that was freaking awesome. And I really hope that this is a sign that they're going to continue this and let the Klingons speak more English. Again, we're not dumb as an audience. We can assume that they're speaking Klingon to each other. So hopefully this is the sign that we've been waiting for, that things are going to get better. I don't know. With the Klingons, at least, I hope this is a sign that things are getting better. I really like that. Yeah. Okay, so another small thing, which I thought was pretty neat. Near the end of the episode, you hear an intercom message for Cadet Decker to report to somewhere.
Cadet Decker, please report to the ready room.
Now, I don't know if this is actually the Decker, but this could be later Captain Decker of the Enterprise from the motion picture. Who knows? If not, it's still pretty neat. It could just be just a little callback. It may not be the Decker. I have a feeling it is. I thought that was neat. Klingon boobs. I never thought I'd ever say that in a sentence before. We got to see Klingon boobs. I don't think it was necessary. I mean, they still could have conveyed that he was, being raped by this Klingon constantly without having to show us Klingon boobs. It was a little awkward. It was a little weird. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but I mean, at the same time, it does actually bother me a lot, because when I think about it, I watched Star Trek when I was a little kid, and I watched it throughout my entire childhood and straight into adulthood. It was something that was safe for kids to watch, and I don't know, this series doesn't seem like it's safe for a younger audience in some episodes. So I don't know. I don't like that they went that far. Star Trek should be something that's viewable by everybody, especially with the message that Star Trek tries to convey. But this is something that I think is lost on the Star Trek Discovery writers. Tyler's true identity. I think at this point it's safe to say that Lieutenant Tyler does not exist, or at least is not alive anymore. I can believe that Lieutenant Tyler was a real person at one point, but I'm pretty damn certain at this point that Lieutenant Tyler is actually Vok. We haven't seen Vok since episode 2 or 3. It just the flashbacks, like he's remembering brutal torture, but what he could also be remembering and not realizing is that he could be remembering the surgical procedures that he went through to go from looking Klingon to looking human. And his mind is reminding him that his mind is making him remember them as torture. L'Rell seems to have this connection with him, doesn't want him to get hurt. She seems to care for him, which is how she seemed to be acting with Vok. So I'm pretty damn certain that after she brought Vok to the House of Mokai, and I think once he got there, they conditioned him to believe that he was human, that he was a Starfleet officer, so that they can use him to infiltrate Starfleet. And I think that's who Lieutenant Tyler is now. Again, he may have been a real person before, but he ain't now. I don't believe for a second that he's human. I could be wrong, but this is what I'm getting from all this. Now let's talk about Lorca. Captain freaking Lorca. He's definitely not your typical Starfleet captain. Where do I begin? Let's start off with the lies. You know, he's buttering up Stamets to go through with these jumps so that he can get more data to explore other universes. I don't know. He lies to Stamets about the medal. The idea of going back to Starbase for a medal seems to make him nervous, especially since Admiral Cornwell is alive, and before she got kidnapped, she was going to remove him of his command and force him to get help because of his PTSD that he's been hiding. And I know this all sounds like minor stuff right now, but then there's how the episode ends, and every episode we've seen so far when they've done a spore jump, the captain has not put in coordinates. One of his officers always set the course, and they jumped. This time, Lorca puts in the coordinates, and if you look at this freeze frame here, he uses his authorization code to override the current coordinates and inputs another one that they hadn't been to yet. So, I don't know. I think Lorca did this on purpose. I think he purposely sent them somewhere else, possibly another universe, mainly because that was brought up earlier, that they could possibly visit other universes. I think he was able to send them to another universe, and he did it on purpose because he wants to avoid losing his command if he got back to Starfleet. I think he did this to get away from losing his ship, which is really, really messed up. But I guess time will tell. I guess we'll have to wait until the series comes back in January before we can get an answer. The Mirror Universe. That's the last thing I want to bring up. We heard a while ago that Jonathan Frakes directed an episode, and it was involving a Mirror Universe. I believe that this is where they are now. I believe that the next episode is going to be that episode. The only question is it the Mirror Universe, or is it a Mirror Universe? Are they going to do their own thing, or is it actually going to take place in the established Mirror Universe from past shows? I don't know. I hope so. And I really hope so. It better not go to a freaking JJ verse, or I'm gonna stop watching the show. But yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to touch on. Okay, guys, so that's everything I noted. I mean, there was a lot to go over with this episode. Maybe down the line I'll do an update video. I don't really know. I have a move coming up soon, and like I don't even know if I'm gonna get this video out in time. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I may have missed stuff. Let me know in the comments below if there's anything you guys noted that I didn't see or mention. And let me know what you guys think overall. Was this a good episode for you? Did you like it? Do you like where the series is going? Is it improving? Also, how much better were the Klingons because they could speak English this time? I think they were really good. I still think they look like total horse crap, but at this point, there's nothing we can really do about that. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Alright, so let's give this episode a rating. Honestly, like I said in my initial thoughts, I thought this was a really good episode. I thought it was a really fun episode. I thought it was a really good Trek episode. I didn't have much problems with it. I mean, there were some things that were kind of weird, like the life signs detector. Also, I didn't mention this in my things to note, but when she plants this sensor in the bridge, it's like the loudest freaking process ever. How the hell did these warriors not pick up on that? How did they not hear this alien sound coming from their bridge? Right? I don't know. It was minor. It's not a big deal, but yeah. Anyways, I think I'm going to give this episode a 5 out of 5. Honestly, like I really don't remember if this is my first 5 out of 5, but I think this is worthy of a 5 out of 5. It had some good callbacks to the original series. It was good in its own right. Like this episode really was good. It stood on its own, and there wasn't enough stupid crap in it to ruin it. It was actually overall a really good episode, and I think it is deserving of a 5 out of 5. Yeah, that's what I think. Let me know what you guys think. Alright, everybody, I think that is it for this video. To keep yourselves informed and up to date, please follow me on all my social medias. Alright? Follow me there. It's a quick and easy update. I don't have to do a video, so if anything comes up or if I'm late, you'll get updated there. So follow me on all my social medias. Alright guys, alright, thanks so much for watching. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you don't, you can give it a thumbs down. If you like my content and want to see more of it, click on that subscribe button, and don't forget to click on the bell notification button so that you'll be notified when I upload new stuff. Alright guys, see you next time. Live long and prosper.